Gig. You might think of a live music event, or perhaps a unit of storage, but in the southwest it has a very different meaning. I wanted to find out more about pilot gig rowing. During my time down in the Isles of Scilly, I'll be finding out all about the physically demanding sport, the rich history, and its fascinating origins. I'll also be looking into the build-up of the pinnacle of gig racing, the World Pilot Gig Championships. My journey began with a short trip down to Penzance, where I'd get one of 3 modes of transport needed to get to the Isles of Scilly, the Salonian.
Audio Jungle. I probably do it mainly for the social side, well, fitness and social side as well. And you know that when you come down, you know that if you're rowing in a crew, there's 5 other people in a cox waiting for you, so you've got no excuse to back out really, so you have to turn up.
Yeah, and I think the same, and also there's like great events like the Isles of Scilly, but also with the regattas throughout the summer. It's something to work for, something to aim for, and yeah, it's really sociable. 6 of you in the boat, got the cox. You know, it's great fun.
So going back 10 years, can you remember the first time you got into a gig boat?
Yeah, I can. I did a kind of social thing for Plymouth Junior Chamber and liked it, so I signed up for getting a gig. And yeah, 10 years later I'm still here.
Mine was for juniors, so I actually had a teacher at school who was a ladies rower and she was recruiting some juniors, so I tried it out with them and loved it. And then went to uni, didn't row at uni, but then moved to Plymouth and yeah, then got into gig rowing here at this club.
Can you sum up how big of an event it is to people that might not know a bit about it?
Oh, you know, it's just the biggest event, like the biggest of the gig championships. So it's, yeah, everyone looks forward to going to Scilly's and so many boats on the start line. It's really, really exciting, really big event. Yeah.
Very inclusive because you've got anybody can do it. You've got people that have been rowing for years, people that have literally it's the first time they've got in a boat, and everybody races together. And
there's the vets category now as well, isn't there? So a separate event for vets. No, it's really good. Yeah, great event.
On the Saturday morning, I joined Michelle, Joe, Emma, and the rest of the Tresco and Briar Rowing Club for a training session. It was my first time in a gig, and I felt privileged to be able to sit in the bows of an original gig, which has competed in several races, including the renowned World Championships here in Scilly. Just from my short time out in the water, it didn't take long for me to appreciate the skill and coordination of a crew. It takes a lot of stamina and fitness to row. I can certainly say that after spending the morning in the crew, I don't think I'll be rowing anytime soon.
All our family have owned gigs or have been shareholders in gigs. We've been shareholders in all of the Briar gigs. Runs through our blood, really. We go back a very, very long way, at least to the 1700s and before, when gigs first started coming in the form that they are now.
I read a bit about how gigs were used originally as lifeboats. They go out to shipwrecks. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, they would go out to wrecks. I mean, it primarily to save lives, but also used in the salvage capacity to try and salvage it. Once they got all the people off and made sure they were all right, they would then go back to the wreck in the gig and get as much off her as they possibly could. Strip her clean, basically.
We're on Briar right now. Is there any sites around us, any rocks that were notorious for ships crashing into and gigs would get out there?
Probably the most renowned one I would have said would be Scilly Rock, where we had 2 ships on the same night.
Yeah.
Went ashore there. All the Briar gigs were involved in those wrecks.
Has the making and sort of development of how gigs were produced, has that changed over the years? Sort of the materials perhaps used to build
The
gigs?
materials are exactly the same now as they always used to be. The gigs now, all the new ones that were built are a clone of a Nuki gig called the Trafai. But years ago, the gigs were very much different shape, depending on what their uses were. If they were primarily used for salvage work, they would be a lot wider, a lot more beam on them. If they were primarily used for pilotage work, they racing out to the ships or what have you, or even the smuggling, they were a lot finer and faster. But gigs were used for all sorts of things: salvage work, even fishing, carrying cargo between the islands, and in the particular case of the Briar gig, the Sussex, that our family was heavily involved in, running down to some areas to pick up the doctor if the doctor was ever needed by anyone on the island. So they were used for various purposes, but now it is just purely racing, and they like them as to be as slippery as a piece of wood as they can.
Do you think gig rowing still has a future over here on Scilly and down in the southwest? Do you think it will still be continuing 10, 15 years?
I think you'll have to say yes, because it's basically just a tourist attraction now. But back in my day and your grandfather's day, it was inter-island rivalry and pride in the gig, but it seems to be driven by the tourist industry now, shall we say.
Describe the gig championships to somebody that doesn't have any idea about gigs or any idea about how big an event it is. How do you describe it?
It's actually difficult to describe the gigs to someone that's never known what a gig is. I mean, it's a long old boat that you row through the water. But when you actually go out there and see all these gigs, you've got the fantastic colours and everything else. You've got varnished ones, you've got coloured ones and everything else. And you set 120 gigs off in a line and then just watch them come in. It's phenomenal. Yeah. It really is.
The World Gig Champions changed in those 15 years. Is it now a lot bigger than it was 15 years ago, or is it the same sort of flow of how it all runs?
It's 30 years ago we started, and there was 19 gigs. Yeah, the start line. Last event, which was 2019, there was 160 gigs on the start line. So yes, it's changed a lot. We've started from a small container down the other end of the green where we're serving teas and coffees to this setup where we've got 2 containers at the back, a porta cabin, and a tunnel serving, well, easily 1,000, 2,000 people a day. So yeah, it's increased a hell of a lot.
Do you expect it to be a lot bigger this year, perhaps 2 years ago?
This year's going to be different because we've actually reduced the number of gigs coming over from the mainland. So we've reduced it from 140 gigs coming from the mainland down to 120 coming from the mainland. And although we've done that, we've increased the number of races.
Yeah.
So the number of people turning up to this event is probably going to be the same. So you're looking at 3,500 people coming to this event.
Falmouth are almost there. Falmouth are almost going to be the world champions. They're in the last few strokes of this final. We will have new winners. Caradon have lost their crown. Falmouth will cross the line first.
They hear the hooter, they throw up the arms, they smash each other on the back. Polvarth gave it everything they had.